Tonight, the Justice League Dark gives us the sequel we've all been waiting for, Jesus Christ 2. Guy Gardner shows the Red Lantern's the only place in the universe worse than Yzmalt, Baltimore. And the Green Team ends off its 8-issue run, proving once and for all that money can't buy Dan DiDio's love. All that and more tonight on the Not-So-New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 126 of the Not-So-New 52. I am your host and I'm going to keep this intro as brief as I possibly can because DC in their infinite wisdom decided, hey, let's put out 18 comics this week. That sounds doable, feasible, great. And the answer, no, it wasn't. But here's the thing. I'm not actually going to talk about 18 comics this week. I'm actually only going to talk about 15 of them. And the reason for that, if you're just tuning in, is that a month ago, there was a really, really light week that only had like 2 comics coming out. I think it was Christmas. I had to move some comics around from this week onto that week, just so both of them could resemble normal episodes. So if you are looking for the annuals of Batman and Robin, Earth 2, or World's Finest, that's over there. Those are books that were covered in that week. It was episode 121. It's titled Fast. So check that out if you want. But as for this week's comics, I'm just going to go through this list in no particular order. We have Forever Evil A.R.G.U.S, Justice League Dark, Catwoman, Batman the Dark Knight, Damian Son of Batman, Talon, Superman, Green Lantern Corps, Larfleeze, Red Lanterns, Aquaman, The Flash, All-Star Western, Green Team Teen Trillionaires, and Teen Titans. That's it. Just 15 little comics, super fast, definitely not going to be well over 2 hours. Dear God, I know it is. Please let me have this for as long as I can. Anyway, jumping right into it and not wasting any more time, let's talk about some Forever Evil. Forever Evil A.R.G.U.S number 4, written by Sterling Gates, art by Neil Edwards. So last issue, Killer Frost and Steve Trevor went to a cabin where they met up with Dr. Stein, who's in charge of the Firestorm stuff, and they need his help to stop Firestorm from exploding. So this issue picks up. We're in Metropolis, and a bunch of Argus agents at like a safe house are being attacked by Firestorm's villains, which are Hyena, Multiplex, Black Bison, and Plastique. They also say Typhoon's around in there somewhere. And everyone's like, hey, Killer Frost should be back. Where'd she go to? And Plastique's like, she's just all emo. She's chilling by herself. I'll give her a call. And they call her up over the little crime syndicate coins and are like, Frost, check in. Where are you? And we see back in the cabin, Frost is looking at the coin, and essentially they're at this point just talking to each other and saying like, look, I don't like that you're a part of this, Frost. And she's like, I don't like you're a part of this either, Trevor. And they keep on getting each other's face, and Stein just jumps in the middle and be like, guys, it doesn't matter. Like, this is more important. If we don't stop Firestorm from exploding, he's going to take out literally the entire universe. So they start talking about this stuff, and it's like, all right, what are our options? What do we have? And I think Steve Trevor comes to the conclusion of, well, if it's a thing of his mental space, like, it's all the different people inside of Firestorm's mind, we need a telepath. We need somebody strong. And at that point, Steve Trevor's like, okay, I have an idea of where we can get a telepath from, but I don't know where to start looking for Firestorm. And that's where Killer Frost jumps in being like, hey, I got this coin thing. They still think I'm on their side. Maybe we could use that to our advantage. And immediately Trevor's like, I'm sorry, you have a coin thing? Dude, that's a communicator. They can track us down, you idiot. And she takes the coin, throws it in the fire. But at that point, we see Grid has already been paying attention. He's been listening to the whole conversation. And he just blows it up. And on the other side of the wall of the cabin are Multiplex, Plastique, all of them, just sitting there waiting. So Steve Trevor unloads a shotgun into Multiplex, kills 1 or 2 of them. Frost starts fighting against a couple as well. Stein knocks out Plastique, but she's already started charging up an explosion. So Frost freezes her and says, okay, that she's still going to go off even if she's unconscious. So we gotta go. So they try to get away from the explosion. Ends up destroying the whole cabin, but does give them enough time to like refocus for a second. So Stein says, hey, this place has a basement. Let's get down there. A black bison shows up and is about to attack Trevor, and Killer Frost freezes him in place. So also Typhoon's causing a storm out there. They never show him. They just say, yeah, he's causing a storm. So they go down into the basement of this place, and it's a full-on, like, laboratory. Like, tons of pods and stuff like that. And Trevor's like, I'm sorry, why didn't you tell Argus you had this entire lab? And he's like, oh, I don't know. This is my private life, and I don't want to tell you everything about it. Anyway, I've got some teleporter pods. They can teleport us wherever we need to go. So they start setting that up, and as they are getting everything ready to go, Typhoon busts in through the ceiling, and he's like, oh, we're not finished with you. But then they're set to go. They've got the teleportation locked in, so they just leave. Then we come back to the green room, and this is where Edda and Obama are held up, and they're talking to a guy that is only known as, like, the Green Man at this point. And basically, he's wearing a Legionnaire's ring, so that's interesting. We don't get to see his face, but he's like, yeah, no, I was given this detail years ago. I locked myself in waiting to make sure that no president was ever harmed again, because I guess he blames himself for something before. And they basically say, Edda, you're going to be super, super important to our plans moving forward here. You're not just an assistant anymore. You're going to be so much more than that. So we cut back to where they teleported out to, and it turns out it's Detroit. And this is specifically the Argus facility that the circus is at. And we get the explanation that if you weren't reading the Vibe book, circus is anytime there's a dimensional breach where someone from a different dimension comes in, Argus finds them, locks them down, and puts them in this thing called the circus. And basically, he knows that there's at least a few telepaths here. So he uses the Argus key to get in. He's immediately greeted on the other side by Agent Gunn, who is the main character from the Vibe book. And he's just like, hey, don't worry about it. I don't know where Vibe is, because that's what Gunn's all worried about. He's probably inside Firestorm. And then he says, I need you to, get me to the circus. I need to find someone specific. So they make their way there, and they come across a woman named Sai, who apparently showed up a month ago, fought against Vibe and Supergirl. She doesn't have a mouth, but she's able to psychically connect with people and, like, telepathically do that. So she reaches out. Her eyes suddenly go black, and she reaches out and grabs after Trevor. Everyone's like, whoa, what's going on? And Trevor gets this brain blast of all these different things having to do with Wonder Woman and Cheetah and the Lasso of Truth. And as he collapses down to the ground, it's just like, all right, well, lock her back up. She's clearly not going to be of use. But Trevor's like, no. I got it. I understand what we need to do. Is just staring me in the face the whole time. And everyone's like, what? What are you talking about? It's like, Xanadu, she gave me a clue. She told me something that I needed. And basically what he comes to the conclusion of is, we need the Lasso of Truth. That's the way we free the Justice League. And in order to do that, we got to go find Cheetah. So that's the mission now. Killer Frost, Dr. Stein, and Trevor are all going after Cheetah to get the Lasso of Truth. I'm down with it. There were a couple of plot things from last issue that didn't get brought back up again. I think there was a Dr. Light thing and a thing of the Crimson Men. That's just not here, but I'm sure it'll come back up at some point. The rest of it's okay. It's just okay. I can't say this is really a standout book for me. I don't think I ever have said that. But it is at least keeping a brisk pace. I think that's the part I like about it, is that this book is playing more with the continuity of, like, here's a bunch of stuff we set up, and it's just kind of going on in the background, and they're just very quickly moving through it of saying, and we're here, and we're there, and we're going to do something else. I don't think this book is going to have any real consequence to it, but it's at least a decent enough read. So I'd say it's probably like 6.5. It's okay. It's not great, but it is just another tie-in. Justice League Dark number 27, written by J.M. DeMatteis, art by Mikel Janín. This is the next part of Forever Evil Blight. Kind of the last part, in a way, but not actually. So last time we had Pandora. It was a whole fight scene where Pandora got some new special powers, and then seemingly both her and Phantom Stranger were killed in the battle with Blight. So this issue picks up with Zoriel, the angel, immediately just charging in and fighting against the giant, like, shadow snake version of Blight. And he's shouting out, he's screaming, he's super pissed off about it, and everyone's like, what's up with Zoriel? Why is he so pissed off? It feels like he went crazy after the other two died. And so he just rushes into battle. And Blight's like, I'm not afraid of you, dude. You're like an angel, and I don't even fear God. And he's like, well, you should fear God. He's stupid. So he goes in, he starts swiping, and Blight just swallows him whole. And Constantine's like, all right, well, he's gone. We'll just have to figure out a different way to win. So and then we cut over to Pandora and Phantom Stranger, which are just floating in the collective unconscious, according to Stranger. Turns out he purposely made it look like he died, and then he psychically told Pandora, hey, follow me in here. And as they start floating around in this hellish area, all of a sudden this light appears above them, and they're like, you can always look to the light of God. And then it's Zoriel, and he shows up, and he's like, hey, the whole reason I'm here is I sensed your guys' presence. I came the most direct route I could to get into you guys. While we're here in the collective unconscious, we can actually go to like Christopher's soul and we can get him, because previously we were fighting a body that's controlled by Blight. Now we can go to the soul that's underlying it. So they start looking out for that. Meanwhile, back in the real world, Constantine's laying down the plan again. He's like, all right, all we got is Dead Man, Nightmare Nurse, Swamp Thing, and me. I don't know. We're just going to do some magic and you guys lay down some artillery fire. And Dead Man's like, dude, let's retreat. How about that? Maybe that's the best plan right now. And he was like, oh, well, what do you care? You're already dead. And he's like, yeah, but I'm in like a living body and I can easily go in and I can just fly into Blight's body. Why haven't we done that? And he's like, because you'll be devoured in an instant. There's no way you can handle him. So at that point, it's revealed that Nightmare Nurse and Constantine have their own separate plan going on. They don't like it, but they cause a spell to build a pyramid around them. And Blight's like, that's kind of cliche, right? Meanwhile, Swamp Thing turns into a giant like sea beast that Sea King is able to control. And they just attack Blight to keep him busy for a while. So Constantine and Nightmare Nurse's plan is this spell called the Black Mare Curse, which essentially takes their inner demons and puts them in charge, like physically transforming them as well, whereas their good selves are just forced into the background. So they turn into demons. Swamp Thing and Sea King get beat by Blight, and he's just like, that was nothing. But then Constantine and Nightmare Nurse start attacking, and he's like, I'm sorry, you're going to try to fight me as evil? That's stupid even for you, but all right. So down in the heart of Blight, we see Zoriel, Phantom Stranger, and Pandora approach Chris's like body, his soul, whatever you want to call it. And as they are about to like free him, Zoriel jumps in the way and he starts fighting off Pandora and Phantom Stranger. It's like, wait, what? Why'd you bring us here if you're just going to betray us? And he's like, you don't understand. I only came here to stop you. And he's like, no, that can't be the case. You stupid God and angel stuff. We never should have trusted you. And Pandora lays a little bit of a smackdown, but then stops before he's like actually hurt in any way. And Pandora's like, okay, for real, guys, maybe I shouldn't be speaking in riddles. He is part of a bigger plan that God has. And as such, I can't let you interfere because he's about to be born again. And Phantom Stranger's like, I'm sorry, what? So the shadow inside of Blight's soul starts attacking them, and it's like, oh, we must defend Chris until he's ready. So they start fighting off all the shadow things, and Blight's just doing the same thing he has been, of like, I am the darkness in every man's soul, blah, blah, blah. So Phantom Stranger and Pandora are left in charge of like watching the body specifically, or the soul of Chris, and they realize like the love in their hearts and their hope for the universe and whatnot, and they send that out into where Chris is, and it starts like a chain reaction. So back in the other world, Constantine in his demon form is actually doing a pretty good smackdown on Blight. They're doing their best. But it does come at the cost of they are actually physically destroying Chris's body. So as Constantine's about to lay a really devastating blow, Nightmare Nurse jumps in and says, no, we can't. The boy isn't at fault here. And she takes Constantine and throws him over the bridge. And that's when Swamp Thing and Sea King pick both of them up and just being like, all right, well, that didn't work. And Blight even says as much. He's just like, guys, for real, you have literally took your inner demons and thrown them at me, and it didn't work. Nothing you do can stop me. I'm just going to take over the world now, okay? Bye-bye. And so it looks like everything is lost. There's no hope left. And down in the collective unconscious, Chris wakes up, his eyes glowing white, and all of a sudden, Blight just explodes. He's gone. And everyone's like, what? Huh? What happened? And we see this angelic looking being that is, I guess, still Chris. He comes out and he's like, hey guys, I pulled a Jesus. And they're like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, I had to become the darkness itself in order to be reborn into a redeemer, something that is able to forgive because I have been there myself. So yeah, Blight's still around. He's still a thing, but like he's no longer going to take over the world because I am here and I am willing to be the spirit of God's redemption. And everyone's like, especially Constantine's like, I'm sorry. So this whole thing, all of this stuff was just a plot in order to make this happen. And Chris is like, yep, you all were pawns. Thank you for that. Anyway, bye. And he starts disappearing. And Constantine all of a sudden realizes, like, wait a minute, Blight's gone. I can sense where the rest of the Justice League Dark is. And he sees Zatanna strapped up inside that machine we've seen a couple times now. And he's like, oh, I know where they are. We can go get them. So there's still more to Justice League Dark Blight. Like, there's more to the storyline of going to get that. But Blight himself is defeated because they pulled a Jesus. I don't hate it. It's silly. It's very silly. But I don't hate it. It feels like it has been building to kind of this thing the whole time. In another way, it does feel like it was spinning its wheels just to get here. So, I don't know. I genuinely do not have strong feelings to this one way or the other. And it feels like I should. So, it's kind of a letdown in that regard. But overall, I'd say, storytelling-wise, I'll give it a 7. It's all right. It's just, this feels like a capper, but we're not done yet. And it also doesn't feel like it's that earned either. So, I guess. But art-wise, it's great. And I do like the way they told the story. So that's what gets it to 7. Catwoman number 27, written by Ann Nocenti, art by Patrick Olliffe, something like that, and Cliff Richards. This is part of the Gothtopia story going on, where everyone in Gotham thinks things are great all of a sudden, and nobody knows why, except a lot of people committing suicide. So we open up in this different world. We see Catbird, not Catwoman, Catbird, and Batman on top of a rooftop taking out some burglars, and they're just basically making out. Like, that's all they're doing. Like, oh, another case solved. Great job, Catbird. You're a great partner. So we also get some narration from some detectives who are basically saying, like, hey, things are super calm since we live in Gotham and everything's great all the time. Maybe we should go down and, like, open some cold cases. And the other detective's like, what do you mean? Why would we worry about that? Things are so cool and awesome. So as we see the burglars that Catbird and Batman have taken out, they actually managed to free themselves from the batarangs and start, like, running away. There's, like, a winter parade going on in the background. I don't know. But regardless, they get recaptured again, and then the detectives show up, and they're like, wow, wouldn't you know it? Another one of our jobs completed before we got here. Thank you, Batman and Catbird. And one of them is actually Detective Alvarez, who, of course, meeting up with Catwoman. He's been a main player in her book for a while. And he says, like, hey, yeah, crime is down everywhere except for, and she's like, no, what do you mean? I don't know what you're talking about. And she's like, oh, well, the suicides. There's so many more suicides across the entire city. Do you know somebody who would be good to, like, talk to people and talk them down? And she's like, I might know somebody. So Batman and Catbird make plans for later that night. They kiss and they go off and do their separate things. Turns out the person that Catbird was talking about was herself, as Selina Kyle. So they, at the Gotham Peace Department, not the police department, anybody who survives their suicide attempt, Selina talks to them and says, like, oh, what's wrong? Why were you thinking this way? And the general consensus as she talks to, like, a jock, like a high school bully, essentially, and also this woman who writes, like, crime stories for the newspaper, they both, like, weren't exactly good people, or they kind of thrived off of the misery that is Gotham. And now that that's gone away, they have nothing left to live for. But, like, the rest of their lives are still great. So they don't know why they feel this way. So, anyway, Selina at that point, she's talking to some lady at a front desk as she's leaving, and just kind of pockets a statue without even thinking about it. So then we get a call from someone at like the suicide hotline, and he's got this whole crazy ass costume thing going on. And he's like, hey, I got this friend, see? And this guy thinks that, like, the whole world has changed and he doesn't fit in anywhere. What would you say to this friend? And she's like, some people are afraid of having good things, so they push good things away. And he's like, right, so push everything out of my life. Got it. Click. She's like, oh, okay, that call didn't go very well. Then the entire events of Detective Comics 27 happen, where Batman realizes this is all fake and he tries to get out of like the simulation or whatever's going on. It's Scarecrow fear toxin. And Catwoman actually captures him along with a bunch of his like allies, thinking he's gone insane, and bringing him to Arkham, which isn't called Arkham. It's called something else. So as he's getting away into the rubber room, she's talking to Bluebell, who's Batgirl, saying like, did we do the right thing? It's Batman. We shouldn't have done that to him. And he's like, oh no, it's important. We had to do that sort of thing. So at that point, we have her go home. She, for some reason, in her trash can has her old Catwoman outfit, which she says smells horrible. And as she falls asleep that night, she has dreams of like crows and ravens, and the crows turn into bats, and the scarecrows are there as well. So like her subconscious is trying to tell her something, but then all of a sudden she's jumped by a big black cat, which actually turns out to be her previous self, Catwoman, instead of Catbird. And Catwoman's like, remember me, you ruined my life, you're awful. And she's like, what? No, your life sucked. Everything about you sucked. You stole things and you didn't have any friends. And she's like, yeah, and we liked it that way. Look at you. You're literally making out with Batman. All right, that part isn't so bad. But like, you're not meant for that kind of life. So they just continued to fight until she says, remember the family game, where we get a flashback to when she was in an orphanage. They would break into houses that didn't have anyone in them and just kind of like, her and a friend of hers would just play house and like steal their stuff. But one night, it's Christmas time, the family comes home and the family's like, oh, well, if you need someplace to stay, we're more than happy. We'll share whatever we have. And this little kid's like, here, you can take my book. And she's so upset by this, she just runs out of the building. So they continue their fight. Catbird manages to get the upper hand, and Catwoman just kind of disappears. And then as she wakes up in the morning, she's holding the costume out of the trash, and she's like, oh, I guess the cat got in the trash. Oh, well, never mind. Hey, sun's up, time to go patrol. So she heads out, and then all of a sudden, she's jumped by that guy who called earlier, and his name is Steel Jacket, and he's like, hey, Catwoman, I've been watching you. I've been saying, you used to be the greatest thief. I'm second banana. I am fully aware that I was always second to your brilliance and awesomeness at being a thief. But now you suck because you turned into a hero. And she's like, what are you talking about? I was never a thief. I was always a hero. She's like, no. Remember, try to focus. Like, what's going on out there? And he hits her hard enough that it like sends her reeling. She gets up, gets a handle on him. And as he's like spouting off like, oh, you sent him to Arkham. You did all this stuff. And he's like, no, like, there is no Arkham. It's just the readjustment center. And he's like, oh yeah, really? And as he keeps on pushing her, she takes out a batarang and like holds it to his throat and threatens to slit it. And she's like, wait, okay, hold on. That's not me though. I don't do that. That was a weird little one-off. I didn't do that. And he's like, no, it isn't. That's you. Open your eyes. Take a look. And as she looks over the edge of the building, she sees Gotham for the festering pit of garbage it really is. And he literally says the line, that other place was some kind of false paradise, a Gothtopia. So, yeah, that's that. As for a Gothtopia tie-in, it's all right. It's the same thing that the other books have been doing, where everyone's just kind of like, oh my god, it's so nice here, but like, I feel like something's wrong. Admittedly, Catwoman, I guess, is more reason not to fall for it, or not to want to escape, because her life is going so much better here than it would have before. Yeah, I don't know. I know that this one has a second part, so it has some good way to come back and like really analyze what the character of Catwoman is and whether or not she would want a life with Batman like that and want to give up everything that has held her back. But as it stands for this issue, it's all right. It's okay. I think the dream sequence was kind of out of nowhere and didn't need to happen, but it's for what it's doing, it's fine. I think the biggest flaw here is the being required to know that Detective Comics happened in between these two issues, because there's nothing in the pages that like hints to that. It just says a few days later, and they're like, well, we caught Batman. It's like, should I have read something? But beyond that, no, it's okay. I'll give it a 6.5. It's not blowing my hair back, but it is at least a decent issue. Batman the Dark Knight number 27, written by Gregg Hurwitz, art by Alberto Ponticelli. This is the second of the little no talking issues, the speechless book that we had. Last issue, there was a migrant family that was brought into Gotham. They were essentially forced into slave labor under Penguin, and Batman found the grandmother, killed, rescued the daughter, but then ended up getting caught by Penguin's goons. So this issue picks up. Batman is still entrapped inside of the lion cage from Haley's Circus, and immediately starts using his ingenuity of using a whip that was left in there to get a jack off the ground and then spread the bars of the cage enough that he can get out. We see Penguin's goons are just standing around, and then immediately a giant explosion just knocks them all out. I think Batman like hijacked a plane in order to fly it into there. So one by one, he gets all the goons and just loads them up inside of the same cage he was kept in. So then back at the Batcave, Batman shows up with Alfred. He starts piecing together all the different parts of Penguin's operation, of all these like Christmas sweatshops he's got going on. He rescued the little elf workshop, and now the holiday cheer place is where he's heading to next. So as he gets there, a bunch of goons and like attack dogs are there. He just pets the dogs to get them to shut up, and then all the goons he just takes out one by one, Batman stealth style, until he makes it inside where some of the goons are attacking some women, and he just gets brutal with them. He uses like their own knives against them, has their arms stabbed and broken, until eventually he gets all of them bound and tied up. And as he goes around to different women, he shows the mother picture of the daughter, and she starts crying. So Batman outstretches a hand and implies that he takes her into the Batjet. So Gordon shows up to the place where Batman first broke out of. He sees like the hole that he left when he crashed in the building, all the guys trapped in the cage, and then he gets a call to come over to the Holiday Inc. place where all the goons are tied up and left again. And it's like, all right, Gordon's got that part handled. Meanwhile, Penguin, who's getting a shave, gets a call from his goons, and the goons explaining like, yeah, Batman took out our operations. We got problems. So he gets up. He's super pissed. Batman leads to the Gotham Hospital, the Wayne Child's wing, and the mother walks in, sees her daughter there. Daughter starts crying in happiness. They run to each other and they hug, while Batman goes off to finish the job. So Penguin's loading a bunch of guys back into a shipping container. I'm not sure what the plan there is, but as he's guiding them in, Batman shows up and just immediately starts taking out all of Penguin's goons, as Penguin just stands there terrified in the shadow of Batman. So, a little follow-up, we see Wayne Enterprises sponsorship for new citizens. The mother and daughter apply for some like help getting citizenship. We see that she gets a job as a secretary to Bruce Wayne himself, and he walks in, gives her a smile, and heads off for his daily work. Meanwhile, Penguin is escorted to a room just full of like dozens of attorneys. So he's sitting there smiling, knowing that he's going to get off from this. And then the final thing is the mother and daughter are praying on their bed with a Christmas tree full of presents. And the mother turns off the light. The child has problems sleeping. She looks out the window, sees Batman there, gives a little wave. Batman waves back. And we see that their Christmas tree is adorned. Instead of with an angel, it's a little Batman. So yeah, that's the issue. It's a nice little two-parter. I think it's a good story all on its own. I don't think having it be 2 issues like helps the story. I don't think there's any reason besides they didn't want to like cut out massive swaths of the like emotional hits that it needed to be cut into 2 issues. But I honestly, I would have put this out as like a special if it were me. I would have made it, all right, here's a 50-page special, totally speechless for like the holiday season. I think that would have worked just fine. As it is now, it's good, but I do think that you lose something of a whole month between the issues. So overall, I'd say quality-wise, this one's probably like an 8. It's very good. It's a very well-told story. Quintessential Batman with like how it shows without showing too much of getting like the thugs and sneaking up on them. We didn't need narration boxes saying like, I am the knight. I sneak up and they don't even know I'm there. Like, that was unnecessary. They did it all through the art. It works perfectly well. I'd say an 8 is well earned. Damian, Son of Batman, number 4, written and art by Andy Kubert. Last issue we had Bruce Wayne getting kidnapped by a new Joker, who just still calls himself Joker. And also, I'm pretty sure last issue Alfred died, and now he is voicing a cat because he needs someone to talk to. So this issue honestly is just an extended fight scene, but some stuff does end up happening. But we do see all the people around. We get some names here of like Jackanapes, Weasel, Phosphorus Rex, and Tomahawks. They're all there helping out the Joker. And Damian realizes, yep, Bruce is out of it. He's not coming to. This is all up to me. And it's only because they're like working together and working under this wannabe Joker that they're able to get as much damage as they are on Batman. And it's also that Batman is, forced to hold back. He wants to kill them. He wants to go that extra mile, but he's forced to hold back this whole time. So he starts letting loose and he's like, you know what? They've hurt me enough. My adrenaline's pumping. I've got the need to kill. So he goes after Jackanapes and he's got a crowbar and he's just beating the ever-loving crap out of Jackanapes almost to the verge of death. But he's like, nope, I made a promise. I'm not going to do this. So at that point, Joker continues, sending the goons after him. And he's just like, come on, do it. Just kill him already. What are you waiting for? And we see one guy opens up like Uzi fire on him and Batman just uses his suit to like armor against it. So they have to go more melee and attacks like that. We do see that Bruce is at least a little bit conscious, but he's not able to do like anything, but he's watching on of what Damian's doing. And Damian in his head is just like, I don't want them to kill me, but I also don't want anything to happen to my father. Maybe this is like the reason that I became Batman. I'm to some level, I'm still seeking his approval, and I need that deep down. So at that point, it's obvious Batman's got the upper hand. He's managing to take out the goons one by one, and he's showing that part of being Batman is that level of self-control. It is that level of holding back and against what you want to do, against what is right. So he starts unloading on the goons. He takes all of them out. And all that's left is Joker. And at that point, he's like, geez, yeah, no, you took out my Sideshow Carnies. And that's a stupid name to begin with. But regardless, you and I are a lot alike, Batman. And Joker, he's like, I'm nothing like you. And he's like, but don't you know, I can tell that you're looking for the approval of the previous Batman. That much is obvious. But also, I'm looking for the approval of the rest of the world, and everyone's going to know the new Joker means business when I kill Bruce Wayne. So as he's about to put a bullet into Bruce's head, he just keeps monologuing, and that's enough for Damian to just come up and hit him in the face and take him out. So he almost kills Joker, but he stops, and Joker's like, see, that's your problem. You're not going to kill me, and I'm just going to keep coming back. You can never put the Joker away for good. And he starts laughing, and Damian just grits his teeth, picks up the Joker, and it looks like he rips open his rib cage. Like, there's a lot of blood, and he's not okay. But Joker collapsed to the ground, and he's like, I still feel like a part of me has let my father down, but I feel so much good. I feel like I'm really rejuvenated here. So he unties Bruce, he picks him up, takes him out, and he's like, I'm never going to let anything happen to you again. But it turns out new Joker is not dead. And he specifically is like coughing. He's like, I'm still alive. And then all of a sudden there's a gun put to his head. And it's the original Joker who says, hey, there's only room in this town for one handsome face, and it ain't yours. And he says, I'm out of retirement. Lock up your sons and daughters. I'm back. So some time passes. We see Damian getting suited up in the Batcave. He's still talking to Alfred the cat, may I say. And he basically it's the end of Batman Begins, where they're looking on the comps and they're saying like, yes, because of everything out there because people were not taking you seriously since you didn't kill and all that. And also the original Joker is now out there. More and more criminals are coming out of the woodwork. You need to go out and stop them. And they're becoming more and more violent. So what are you going to do? And Damian slaps on his thing and says like, oh, well, for all the good citizens of Gotham. And also still finding Grayson's killer because I don't think it was the new Joker. I'm going to go defend them. So we get one last little sequence where there's a convenience store robbery and some guys in masks are just, they've got like a family held hostage and then the owner of the shop held hostage, and they end up killing the mother in the family and then also the owner of the store, and they start running, and wouldn't you know it, Batman jumps in and is like, oh, hey, dirtbags, it's the Batman, and he kicks them in the face. And then he says, damn right. So, yeah, I don't have that much attachment to, like, Batman of Bethlehem. I don't really care that much about Damian's, like, future as Batman in that regard. So this miniseries was always kind of a weird one to me because it never felt like it was something that was needed. Not in the way that, like, obviously no miniseries ever needed, but like this book felt like it was trying to tell a story in a storyline that had already kind of disappeared. Because as far as anyone's aware, at this point in the universe, Damian's dead. Like, there's no reason to have this here. In the main universe, Damian is gone. So to explore more of this like possible future thing, I don't know, it just kind of feels like it never justified itself, if that makes sense. It feels more like they had this mini-series kind of sitting around since like the beginning of the New 52, and it was only once Damian died they were like, oh yeah, we were going to publish that. All right, yeah, guys, go ahead, Andy. We'll put it out monthly for a while. So all in all, it's an okay read. Me personally, I don't care enough about this future like super harsh Batman world to like really care enough about how he came to be. It's an origin story for a character I don't much care for. So all in all, I'd say it does still have talent behind it. I will give it above like the average mark and say it is a solid, I'd say 7. I think it's good, but it's just not for me. That's the main thing here. I'm sure it has its audience. I'm sure there are people who really enjoy the idea of the Batman of Bethlehem story, but just not here on this show. Talon number 15, written by Marguerite Bennett, art by Jorge Lucas. So last issue was the end of James Tynion's run on Talon. We only had like 3 issues left after that. And this is a standalone, where it's just the story of the Talon that came after William Cobb, like the main Talon from the first arc. So we open up down in the labyrinth of the Court of Owls, and William Cobb is having his throat slit open by this new Talon, saying like, oh, I am not a man, I am an owl, I am more than that. So we see the owls applauding him, saying like, oh yes, William Cobb has fallen, and congratulations to the new Talon. And then we tell the story in reverse order. So we cut to an hour earlier where the owls are essentially saying, hey, Talon, you did great. You survived the labyrinth. Now it's time for your final test. You must fight against the previous Talon, William Cobb. And Cobb, like, daunts him a little bit, just being like, oh, you may have survived it, but you're weak now. You'll never defeat me. Then we cut to a few hours prior to that, and we see him in the hall with all of, like, the portraits of people who are lost down here. And he's like, oh, I'm thinking about my mother, but I can't. I'm not thinking about my mother. I don't even have a mother. I was born out of an egg. Like, I have no mother. And we see one of the portraits behind him just like give a scary face and then change back to normal as he makes his way through the labyrinth more. A few hours earlier, he's drinking from the fountain in the center of the maze, and he's like, okay, yep, this fountain is drugged, and it's making me see things. It's bringing some dark visions to my brain. And we see one of the visions that he had a few hours prior to that is a headless woman saying, gotta kill them all, while carrying an axe. Meanwhile, this young boy's head is on a chicken running away. There's a lion with a fire mane, and then another boy trapped in a cage being overwatched by a vulture. It's an Alice in Wonderland nightmare. So a few hours before that, We see him leaping through some fire. A few hours before that, he's leaping through some traps. Same thing, even more. And it basically goes back a full 2 days until it shows 2 days ago he entered into the maze to start with. And he puts on his mask, and we see just before he puts it on, he's got these carvings in his face in the shape of feathers. So it shows 2 months prior, he lives in an Egyptian themed room because he believes in Anubis and like weighing of the heart of man against the feather of truth. And so every time he kills someone, he carves like a feather onto his skin in order to like up his chances of survival, I guess. So then we cut to 1 year prior. We show him, I guess, being trained, and the Talons and Court of Owls are looking on, showing like, I mean, he's doing pretty good. He's down in this pit and he's surviving all these traps and such. 6 months prior to that, by the way, this guy is black, and it is like around the 1920s, I think, somewhere in that era. So he's being called out by a bunch of racists as they leave this circus, and this guy, like, he calls him a crow, and this guy that we don't have a name for, the Talon, just grabs him by the throat and says, no, not a crow, I'm an owl, I'm a Talon, and he just kills this dude. So we see 4 years prior, he was actually a teen in Haley's Circus who was essentially like the animal guy. Like, he worked with all these dangerous animals, and he showed no fear. He leapt through like rings of fire on the back of lions. So he was just this incredibly brave guy that they had. A year prior to that, we see a bunch of people at Haley's Circus are heading to the train they came in on, specifically the bird train cage that they had, and inside is this young boy who is sleeping inside. So a year prior to that, we see the boy running through the woods, terrified out of his mind. Apparently his name was Jonas, and his mother named him that. It means dove, but it also has another meaning, which is destroyer. So then we cut to another year prior. It's 1918, and he's living in Georgia, and the Spanish flu came through. And not only did it kill his sisters and his father, but it also killed like all of their livestock and their chickens and such. And the mother kind of didn't do well with losing most of her family. And so she's like, they brought a sickness here, Jonas. We got to kill them all. We got to kill them. And she has this axe, and she's just going around killing every single one of their livestock with just like incredible insanity. So huge bloody field of chickens is there. And we cut back to now. William Cobb has been killed, and we see in his mind, he breaks and he starts transforming into this huge owl beast. And he's like, this is it. I finally have reached my point. I'm no longer a man. I am an owl. And he bows before the Court of Owls saying, yes, I'll kill them. I'll kill them all. So it's messed up, man. It's a messed up story. I like it, though. I think it's a nice little one shot of just, hey, these are killers. These are people who are just mentally broken and torn down and then rebuilt up, and essentially a cult to be a murderer. It's a cool story idea, and I'm glad that this book took an issue to say, like, yeah, but let's examine that more. What does it mean? What happens when a new Talon is introduced here? What kind of person would it be that, like, takes pride in that role? And clearly it's a messed up guy. So overall, I think this issue is probably like 8.5. I really do enjoy it. It's an interesting way it's told. It keeps this like tension throughout that you don't really know who this guy is. And by the time you hit the end, you get like the payoff to that nightmare at the beginning. Transformation into the giant owl beast thing. Fantastic looking. It's good on writing and it's good on art. So 8.5 seems good to me. Superman number 27, written by Scott Lobdell, art by Ed Beans. Last issue, Parasite went to a hospital because he sensed Lois's new psychic abilities, and Superman has to stop him. And also Lois knows Clark's secret identity. So we open up in the hospital where Parasite's just like, oh, yes, this feels fantastic. I love everything about this. And Lois is psychically like reaching out saying like, oh, I can't see you anymore, Clark. I'm going blind in my mind. And Clark's like, oh, put her down, Parasite. I swear to God, I'm going to incinerate you. And then like he sets her down because his brain is literally like catching on fire. Like it's just full fire on the back. It's just like, oh my God, it's like an ice cream headache, but I can't stop. I love it. So as Lois is falling down, Superman rushes in, grabs her, and just be like, okay, his power is proximity based. I got to get her far away from him, and then I'll head back and deal with that. But he's trying to like reach out mentally to Lois, saying like, Lois, can you hear me? What's going on? And there's no response. And he's like, okay, well, I mean, that's kind of good. It means that she's not able to like psychically connect anymore, but that's bad because who knows what's going on inside her head. So as people in the hospital start evacuating, we got John Carroll's in there as well. And he's like ushering people away, and people are like, why should we listen to you? And one of them's like, that's John Carroll. He fought in wars, man. And everyone's like, okay, sure, whatever. So there's a guard, a cop or something who's shooting a Parasite. He immediately just gets all of his life force drained from Parasite. And then Superman comes up and being like, no more people will get hurt from you. And Parasite's like, I'm sorry, are you fighting me with your fists? You do understand that doesn't work against me, right? And he's like, yeah, well, I'm going to punch you hard enough and fast enough that your powers aren't going to have a chance to kick in. And he's like, all right, good strategy. Like where you're coming from. Not going to work. And then Parasite just grabs him by the throat, and he's about to like bite into Superman to steal his powers. But then John Carroll jumps in, uses an oxygen canister to stop his bite, and then takes the gun from the security officer and just like, remember this gun? He just fired it at you like 15 seconds ago, and shoots the canister that explodes in Parasite's mouth. Superman, like a speeding bullet, flies away from the explosion with John Carroll enough that it's not enough to harm him. And he takes him over to where Lois is. And he's like, oh, Lois, she's safe. Hey, it's no coincidence the Parasite showed up there. Do you have any reason like as to why Lois would be targeted by Parasite? And Superman's like thinking like, yes, clearly. But he's like, no idea, Jonathan. I'll look into it after everybody is safe. And John's like, thank you, Superman. I know I could trust you. But then Parasite busts in through the wall being like, hey, Superman, I'm here for more of that psychic energy that girl has that you definitely knew she had. You know that she's psychic, and that's why you're keeping me away from her. And John's like, I'm sorry, what's he saying about her being psychic? And he's like, I'll tell you later, Jonathan. Anyway, I'm going to take care of him. So he's fighting against Parasite. Jonathan takes a fire hose off the wall and like rappels down the stairwell with Lois, saying like, well, I don't know if I can trust you anymore either, Superman, because clearly you know more than you're letting on. And he just takes Lois away, and Superman's like, oh man, it's as if my life wasn't complicated enough. Then we stop everything and we go over to Cat Grant, who is being investigated by like a bunch of different reporters who were just like, how did you get the drop that General Lane was going to be like tasked to become a senator? Because that happened last issue. And she's just like, what can I say? We're like the best. And they're like, no, but seriously, your website's name is Clark Kitropolis and you have like 3 viewers. How in the hell did you get the scoop on this? And she's like, I gotta go back inside. Bye. So she goes in, she leaves another message for Clark saying like, hey, we're getting hounded a lot. How did you get that scoop? Like, call me. And then as he's standing there, Morgan Edge is just in her office. And she's like, this is a private building. He's like, yeah, I own this building. And like this city is owned by my boss. So you've made some very important people very unhappy by managing to scoop us with this. And she's like, well, I don't know what you want me to say. I mean, it's going to be. And he's like, all right, look, I'm not going to play this game with you. If you don't want to give up your source, fine, whatever. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to buy your company and merge it into mine for $13 million cash. And she just doesn't say anything. So we cut over to DC, where Sam Lane is talking to a mysterious, shadowy figure who's seemingly higher up the chain of command. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry this leaked. It wasn't me who said it. I don't know how they figured it out, but if you need to change your mind, I fully understand. And shadowy figure's like, whatever, dude. It doesn't matter. Hey, what do you know about the tower? So sure that's going to come up next. Anyway, back to Superman. Parasite is knocked out down at the bottom of a parking garage, and it's just like, cool, awesome. I need to take care of this, because when he absorbed Lois Lane's energy, he also knew my secret identity. So like, I have to somehow take him out, and also Psycho Pirate knows my identity. A lot of people are knowing my identity recently. Not a cool thing. So he uses his X-ray vision, looks up and sees Lois is safe, and is just like, all right, cool. And it's weird, though, that her psychic abilities have lessened. Maybe the cure is literally Parasite. Like, she won't remember anything, and she won't have to, like, go through the psychic energy stuff if I just let Parasite feed. Like, is that really the key to this? Do I risk her life by saving my own identity there? And at that point, Parasite sits back up. He's like, what? Ah, geez, man, I already need a top off. Anyway, I still have your abilities because you're so close. He blasts Superman with heat vision and just be like, okay, all right, whatever. As I know that the power dissipates. That's a good thing to know. I just need to take out Parasite now. So he uses his ice breath, and there was like some, I don't know, it was an explosion or something going on, but he manages to stop that. And he looks back and sees Parasite's not inside of like the ice block that he made. So he's already back up attacking John and Carol. John is shooting at him, and he's like, dude, seriously, why did you think a gun's going to work? It literally has not worked any other time you've been using it here. So he just grabs John, throws him aside, picks up Lois, and just like, all right, Lois, give me back your power again. And he gets back all the Brainiac energy, and he's like, yes, awesome, this feels amazing, but it's too much. I'm overloading. And he falls down. And John comes back. He's like, what, is he dead? And Superman's like, nah, he's just fried. His brain couldn't handle all that. And John was like, okay, question. What's going on, man? You know, Lois was psychic or something? And he's like, yeah, look, I don't have to explain anything to you. And he's like, all right, screw you, Superman. I don't care about that. So Lois starts coming to, and Superman's like, hey, Lois, do you know who I am? And he's like, yeah, you're Superman. Why? Do you have another name? And he's like, no, I do not. All right, everything worked out there. And then his thought bubbles are like, but I did consider putting her life at risk just for protecting my secret identity. Is that really what Superman would do? And then we go deep into space. And someone says, my lord, we have a problem. And they say, it's Earth. And we get the reveal that Hellspawn is still alive. And he's drinking a thing, and he says, ah, yeah, Earth usually is the problem. All right, the book itself, up until that last page, fine, it's whatever. I don't think Superman, would do that in any situation of saying my secret identity is so important I would put Lois at risk, but fine, if you want to analyze that and take a little issue, so be it. I never wanted to see Hellspawn again, and we were doing so well. We had so much time without Hellspawn showing up, but now here he is being teased for a future thing. God damn it. 6. It's not good. It's not a great arc. And I was already kind of like, oh yeah, no, I'm sure they'll kill Lois Lane with this psychic energy thing. Maybe they could have given her some residual powers. Maybe they could have let her keep Clark's secret identity. But all in all, this arc just kind of felt like, and now we're back to the status quo where nobody knows Clark's identity that really matters. So yeah, a bit disappointing, but not any more disappointing than the last page, because that just brings it down a whole extra level. So this is a 6. God have mercy on our souls. Green Lantern Corps Annual Number 2, written by Robert Venditti, Van Jensen, art by Bernard Chang, and Sean Chen. So this is kind of the follow-up to both the last issue of Green Lantern Corps, number 27, and Green Lantern Period, which is also number 27. And essentially after Hal's call went out, his fake call where he basically declared war on the rest of the universe, things started getting bad, and the Green Lantern Corps had to go investigate a downed Green Lantern clubhouse, best way to describe it, which was being under attack by the Coons. So this issue picks up on Mogo, and Hal, he's coming to everything. All the other lanterns start flying out, and Hal's just like, you know what? This is just great. This is just perfect. Mogo's being attacked. There's a bunch of enemy ships in the air. Let's go nuts. I'm having a bad day, and I want to let it out on somebody. And we see on all of these enemy ships are literally all of the people that were freed from the science cells of Oa during the attack by Relic. So they're immediately like, oh God, they're coming. Get us out of here. And we see the lanterns just come in and start punching through everybody they can. Just one by one, all of them are getting attacked. And then every once in a while, we have the annual. There's just a page where we get the backstory on a given villain as they're showing up here. So the first one here is Evil Star, which is 90 years ago. He has the ability to draw life from other people around and then use it into himself in order to cure some disease. And it gives him this big star tattoo on his chest. He does it, and it kills what seems to be his wife. And he's like, I don't want to die, so sure. So back over in Sector 424, John and Fatality and the other lanterns they had there are facing against some Coon ships. And it's like, okay, well, step one, we take out the ships. And they're like, how? They have our lantern draining tech. And it's like, we do this. And he grabs hold of the entire remains of the clubhouse and just throws it into the ships. And he's like, there, that'll hold them off for a while. Let's go. So at that point, the Coon, little forward marching units come out. They start firing off the draining tech on a couple of the lanterns, which does drain them all the way to zero. So they start suffocating out in space. The Coons seal them up into some tubes where then Olliversity, the snake lantern, comes in and starts freeing them. John uses his ring to keep them alive, to give them a little bit of cover. But then both Olliversity and John again start getting their stuff drained, so there's not much they can do in regards to that. So then we cut over to planet Durla, where the Durlans are, obviously. The Coon leader, and this is 12 hours ago, shows up, and it's like, all right, tell your guys we arrived. And we see Prixium Nolange is there, the leader of the Bradesmen. And she's the only one that showed up. And the Coon are like, what's this? We need more than just a single girl. This is stupid. And she's like, oh, well, you guys aren't wearing suits, and this atmosphere is highly toxic, so you guys aren't able to have kids anymore. And it's like, what? You got... Son of a bitch. So they make their way into a Durlan temple, I guess is the best way to describe it. And it's only the leader that's allowed deeper in, along with Prixium. As they arrive at this huge room with just a swirling mass of, Durlan teeth and bones. And basically, the Coon leader describes yep, our fleet has taken out dozens of sector houses. We've taken many lanterns. The tech that you gave us from Relic works perfectly. And he's like, great, awesome. And essentially the deal comes down to the Durlans want to take out the Green Lantern Corps because obviously they've had this plan for a long time. The Coon are in because why not? They will get a basically huge amount of the leftover sectors after everything is said and done. And then the Braid clan is also into it because they've been wronged by the Green Lantern Corps, and the Durlans are going to help them as well. And the Prixium is basically like, hey, what about the people in the science cells? Those are people who were free during Relic's thing. And the Durlans are like, yeah, we didn't account for them, but we're working on it now. We're going to go and enlist them to our cause. So then we get Bolfunga's backstory, which is basically he was an orphan. He showed some defiance, so they trained him up on being a good warrior. And then he literally stabbed his teacher in the back. And the teacher's like, that's good. You're cool. Falls over. So over in Space Sector 422, on these ships that were holding all the villains, the Durlans were like, hey, join our cause. Help us take down the Green Lantern Corps. And everyone's like, why? What should we do for you? And he's like, well, you're going to do it because we've made this plan, and you're not going to mess it up because we're not going to allow that. And Bolfunga's like, you know what? Here's the thing. You guys make a generous offer that you're willing to work with us. But Bolfunga bends no knee. And he just rips off the Durlan's arm. And we see that all of these guys are essentially, all the villains are against the Durlans. They don't want to be subservient to them. Then we get Chun Yul, who his planet was dying because of atmospheric stuff, went down to Earth to steal one of their atmospheric cleaners, fought Superman and accidentally crushed the atmospheric cleaner. So then he was banned from his home planet because of it. Also, his power is he can grow. So back on Mogo, we see the battle between all of the villains and the Green Lanterns going on. Bolfunga gets knocked around a little bit, and as he falls off a building, Chun Yul catches him and sets him down. So then Chun Yul goes to step on one of the other lanterns, which then they made basically a Green Lantern tack to stab him in the foot, and it's like, yeah, see, I'm able to handle myself. So Hal flies around and he's like, hey, Mogo, we're in a little bit of trouble. Need you to bring down some ships. Call down the gravity waves. And he's like, yeah, no problem. So Mogo increases the gravity enough to pull the ships down with a very heavy crash landing. Hal goes up, he digs them out, and he's like, look, we know there's more of you inside. We're gonna take you out one by one and put you in the deep dark cave we've got instead of science cells. But as he opens up the ship, there's John and his entire Green Lantern crew. And he's like, hey, Hal, shut up and listen. So we go back to the fight between the villains and the Durlans. We see Bolfunga is holding his own pretty damn well to the point where he's actually seemingly able to kill one of them. Meanwhile, the Durlans are like, okay, look, we already planned for this as well. If you guys don't join us, I got a bomb and I'm going to blow it up unless you really listen to us and take us seriously here. And then one of the other guys just like grabs the detonator, pulls it away from the Durlan, and just like, stop monologuing. You guys are stupid when you keep on telling everybody your plans. So the Durlans are essentially handled by all of these villains here. And it's like, okay, these are these Durlans, but obviously there are more. They already said as much. What are we supposed to do here? We can't let them take over the entire universe and subjugate us. So then we get the backstory of Kanjar Ro, who I guess was just a general like warlord, sort of like criminal guy. And he's about to get it on with a bunch of alien women when suddenly his wall busts down. And it's like, hey, you said that you killed us, but you were wrong. And we're here to exact our revenge. And then he's sold into slavery. And somehow he turns into a villain. I'm not sure how that one turns out. So anyway, we see with all of John's men brought in onto the Khund ship, they're held prisoner, and the Khund are seemingly about to kill them until there's essentially a knock at the door and the villains show up. And the villains are like, hey, did the Durlans tell you we were coming? And the Colonels are like, no. What's going on? It's like, oh, well, the Durlans didn't think you'd be able to handle it, so they sent us. We're supposed to be the cavalry. And the Khund are like, how dare they not think we can handle ourselves? And it's like, right, totally. Anyway, this Green Lantern, John here, he made me suffer a lot. So can you just give me the gun and let me handle that? So Khund hands over the gun, and then immediately they just start killing all of the Khund warriors. So at that point, John gets up, and we see the villains are basically helping them out now. And it's like, yeah, no, we truce temporarily while we take care of this Durlan thing, because clearly you guys are in way over your head. So we see them going to Mogo, and John's basically saying, yeah, we got to get down there. We got to reevaluate our situation. We got to see what all we're dealing with. And clearly some of the Green Lanterns are not up for working with the enemies here, but it's the least they can do. We then get one named Zuri, who was essentially just the getaway driver for a bunch of other people of her race. They were knocked out by some Green Lanterns, and she was essentially the fall guy. She just took a lot of the blame for it. So back on Mogo, Hal's getting it all explained to him. And John's basically like, look, this is war. We are in a war now. And sometimes in war, you have to make alliances with people that you don't exactly like in order to take down the bigger threat. That's just what we have to do right now. And some of the other Lancers are like, no, we don't need him. We can do it without him. But basically all the people in charge are like, look, the command center's destroyed. We were already attacked. We don't know who's with us, who's against us, because the Durlans are shapeshifters. We're going to have to do this, and we're going to have to trust each other. So at that point, Hal steps up, just being like, yeah, the Braid clan's involved too. They saw them jump in. I know they're there. And with all three of those working together, of the Khund, the Braid clan, and the Durlans, we are going to need all the help we can. But how do I know this is the real Bolfunga? Maybe he's just a weak Durlan version. And Bolfunga's like, how dare you? I will take you down, Hal Jordan. And he like spits all in his face. And Hal's like, all right. I knew the real Bolfunga would get all riled up. So, yep, we're good. And they shake hands. And basically the deal here is that every villain is going to be paired up with their own Green Lantern. But they specifically pick out one guy named Hunger Dog, who we get one page of showing that he's a master tracker and he never loses his prey. And they say, hey, look, we need you to find the head of the corpse. And Kilowog's like, I'm sorry, what is that? What the hell is the head of a corpse? And it turns out that there is a Green Lantern Durlan. His name is Von Daggle. He was put under deep cover like years and years ago. And they need to go out and find him, but he's so hard to track down because he's in deep cover. They need this tracker guy to do it. And we cut over to Durla, who they're saying like, yep, we've accounted for everything. And we even have a Durlan in the Green Lantern Corps. And that Durlan will betray the Green Lanterns once we make contact with them. And we see that they are also talking about Von Dagel. So both the Durlans and the Green Lantern Corps are going for Von Dagel because he's going to be the key to breaking all this down one way or the other. And we'll see which side he ends up falling to because, yeah, it could go either way. Here's the thing. Remember, like, maybe a year ago when we introduced Threshold and we had that deep cover Green Lantern there as well? Why are we just doing this again? I don't know. It seems weird to me. But as for everything else, it's a fine annual. It does a good job of saying, okay, villains teaming up with the heroes in order to take down this bigger threat. Fine, good, decent enough story. I do feel like this is one of those things where clearly they're giving a little bit of backstory for people who don't know Green Lantern mythos, but I do feel like if I had read the entire Jeff Johns saga, I'd be a lot more informed as to who the hell half these people are. But it does a decent job of explaining it for newbies like me. So overall, I'm going to give this one, I'll give it an 8. It's a low 8, but it is still an 8. It's got enough to it that I'm interested in the plot, and I do like this idea of a Durlan Green Lantern that's just been off the grid for a while. So we'll see how that all shakes out in next month's issue. Larfleeze number 7, written by Keith Giffen and J.M. DeMatteis, art by Scott Kolins. So last issue, Larfleeze escaped his imprisonment from the Orange Lantern Corps and took back all of his power. And then there was something going on with the 10 something or another over in Stargrave's plot. Genuinely doesn't matter. So we pick up on the World of Sorrow, which is where, what's her name, Dirge took up residence. And we see that her twin sister, Errata, who is apparently the goddess of chaos or something, just a giant tornado starts swapping through. And it's just like, oh, I've showed up. It's time for us to war again. And Dirge just like, oh, yes, you've traveled here and you've followed me. And our war is never ending. We will end it once and for all now, though. So they start fighting each other. Dirge is basically saying hey, I've built this whole planet. They will take you on. All of my people that I have overruled here. And they're just like, pshaw. Errata does not care. Errata is the goddess of the chaos. I will destroy them all. So as that fight's going on, Larfleeze is up in the air above the planet, and he senses... he doesn't sense. His ring starts speaking to him, and he's like, Ring, you haven't talked to me in forever. And he's like, yeah, I really don't like doing it. But anyway, I can feel something bad down there on the planet. You're going to want to stay away. And he's like, what? But Stargrave's signal is down there. I got to go get my stuff. And he's like, okay, but you could die, and then it's not who cares about your stuff? And he's like, I care about my stuff. So then he flies down anyway and ignores his ring. So we see Errata is about to smash Dirge and win the fight all over. But then Larfleeze just grabs her, picks her up and says hey, where's my butler? He's like, what? Who the hell are you? Why are you here? And he's like, what? So at that point he comes in and he's like, yeah, no, I'm all out of clean underwear. I've been wearing the same pair for weeks now. I need Stargrave to do my laundry, so tell me where my butler is. And then Errata just swats Larfleeze aside with her power, and Larfleeze gets up and is like, oh, you just made a big mistake. So at that point, Errata starts chewing out Dirge, being like, oh, you got saved by a dog monkey thing. What's that thing about? She's like, I have no idea, but it has something to do with our sister, because she brought along that little butler guy before. So at that point, Larfleeze gets up and charges into battle and starts attacking them. Meanwhile, we cut over to, I'm going to forget her name every time, but the Wanderer, that's it. And they are currently sitting there waiting for the Council of 10 to make up a decision about whether these two can join their army. And apparently it's already been 3 days. And it's just okay, well, maybe we can do other things while they make up their mind. So at that point, Stargrave and her zoom through the cosmos and just see if they can figure out other explorations to go through. And Stargrave's like, hey, look, you keep on saying that, like, you've been at war with the Council of Ten for generations and eons and millennia. They don't seem like they're a threat. Like, why are you so concerned about it? It's like, well, they're actually the descendants of the original Council of Ten, so they're not as focused, but they are still dangerous, so not a big thing. Then all of a sudden they get attacked. And they get attacked by the Laird of the Hunt. If you remember, that was back in, like, issue 1, we got introduced to him. And he's like, hey, where's Larfleeze? Where's that orange dude who attacked me and left me left me humiliated? I'm going to exact my vengeance on him. So we go back to Larfleeze, who's still fighting against Errata, and he's actually, like, driving back Errata. He causes his own orange whirlwind that fights her back. And then Dirge is like, nobody attacks my sister but me. So then she turns into her corporeal form, some big thing that's able to invade Larfleeze's mind and, like, infect him with the despair. But as she invades his subconscious, the only thing that's in there are giant big stone letters that spell mine. And she's like, what? That's it? That's all that's in here? That's the most focused, single, narrow-minded thing I can imagine. I've never seen a mind so just greedy like this. And then all of a sudden, a bunch of orange construct Larfleeze heads come zooming in off the horizon, all just saying mine, 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 mine over and over again until they devour Dirge's, like, subconscious spirit. So back in the real world, Dirge has gone comatose, and Errata's like, what? What do you do to my sister? And he's like, I don't know. I just felt something in my head. I got a headache now, but I don't know what she did. So he picks up, Errata picks up Dirge and it's just like, okay, look, we got to take care of this orange thing. So he zaps Larfleeze enough, or she zaps Larfleeze enough to, like, take him out simultaneously and then teleports out of there with Dirge. So then Larfleeze is pissed off, being like, no, you can't leave. What about my butler? I need my butler. And then all the people of Dirge's planet come up and they're like, great hero, you saved us. That person infected us with unending sadness and you saved us all. And Larfleeze is like, I don't care. I don't care about any of you. What do you? I just want my butler back. And he's like, well, I mean, we're a broken race and Dirge has driven us all close to suicide, but, like, we're willing to share whatever we have. And Larfleeze is like, I'm sorry, you're willing to give up things? Okay, maybe we can talk. So then we go back to the Laird of the Hunt, who's still talking with Wanderer. They go back to his planet, and he's just like, look, my world's in shambles, all because of that stupid monkey dog thing. I demand revenge. And he turns to Stargrave and is like, you, tell me everything I need to know about Larfleeze. And he's like, gladly, I will share everything. And then the Lord, like, straps him down to a board, and Stargrave's like, wait, hold on, I said I would tell you everything. Why are you going to torture me? And Wanderer's like, oh, he just does that for fun. That's just what he does. He's going to torture you anyway, but you're going to give him the answers. So at that point, Errata shows up in, like, a projection, and she's like, hey, we need to have a family meeting. Something happened to Dirge. It's because of this orange dog monkey thing. And Larda's like, oh my God, I was just dealing with that too. Okay, yeah, let's deal with that family meeting. So they say that they're going to meet at Zum's Citadel at the Hour of the Shadow, whatever's happening there. And Stargaze's like, well, it seems like I'm not going to get tortured anymore as long as we go to this family reunion thing. And Wanderer's like, oh yeah, but this is ultimate. You should be afraid of our family councils. So seems like all these ancient extra-dimensional entities are going to meet up to try to beat up Larfleeze because he's just that much of a prick. It's fine. It's a good issue. Not much to really say about it, honestly. It's kind of the same as it has been. Honestly, though, we are missing out a bit more on, like, humor. It doesn't... Like, there are the comedic bits to it, but I remember the earlier issues having more just straight-up, like, jokes and more, like, witty lines. It feels like we're actually focusing on the story now, and I appreciate that, but I never read this book for the story. I read this because it was, well, part of my job doing the show, but because it was funny. So, all in all, I don't know. I'm glad they're focusing more on doing something, but I also feel like I'm missing out on what the book originally was. So, I'm going to say this is probably a 6.5. It's not bad. It's not good. It's just there. Red Lanterns number 27, written by Charles Soule, art by Jim Calafiore and Alessandro Vitti. So last issue we had the death of Ratchet, after the Red Lanterns rescued a planet from a dictatorship and blah, blah, blah. So this planet apparently built them statues, all these core Red Lanterns they had. And the Red Lanterns are looking on, commenting, saying like, all right, looks pretty good. All except for Guy's, though, because Guy still looks like he does on the cover of this book, the classic way you think. But turns out in the meantime, he's grown out his hair, and best way I could describe it is a biker's mustache. So the people of this planet are kneeling before them, being like, hey, thank you so much for freeing us. We were forced to make statues, which is why we decided to make some for you, using our skills to the best. Gensui, the evil dictator, we've hunted down all of his supporters, and we are eliminating them one by one so that it will never happen again. And all the people are like, or all the Red Lanterns like, look, here's the thing. Cool with you trying them, cool with you bringing them to justice, but the word eliminate, don't do that, or else we're going to have to come back for you. Don't become monsters. Be cool. So all those people leave. I guess they're on Yzmalt, so they just leave Yzmalt, go back to their own planet. And Bleez points out, like, hey, when Ratchet died, his ring went off into space. It found a new Red Lantern host. We should probably go find that. They run rampant until they're dipped into the Blood Lake, so we need to go find them and get them here so they can think, critically. And Guy's like, cool, you want to go do that? And she's like, yeah, that's the whole reason I brought it up. And he's like, why? Are you gonna go ahead and try to make yourself a new Red Lantern pet the same way you wanted to use me? And she's like, come on, I'm a different person than I was back then. And he's like, I don't trust you, but fine, whatever. And then Rancor shows up, and he's like, hey, I want to come too. I want to explore the universe. Turns out I'm really into interstellar travel. And Bleez is like, no, I don't want to do that. And Guy is essentially like, go ahead, do it. So they take off and go to find out where the new Red Lantern is. Meanwhile, Guy is left with Zilius and Scalix. And he's like, hey, you guys want to go to Earth? And they're like, yeah, sweet, awesome road trip. So we follow Bleez and Rancor, and we kind of just get a page where Rancor's like, hey, I'm in over my head, and I would like some guidance here. This universe, it's so amazing. I've seen so many cool things. I'm happy that you could give me some guidance. And she's like, yeah, sure, I guess, whatever. But what do you want to know? And he's just, asking some questions of like, oh, well, how are you tracking down the ring? Like, what's going on with that? And she explains that he just basically says all the rings have a signature and I could track it down easily. So we follow the other lanterns going back to Earth, and Guy basically lays it down of like, hey, just so you guys know, you haven't been to Earth, right? And you're like, no. It's like, okay, just so you guys know, Earth has like 2 or 3 dozen people that, like, if they show up, you just don't start a fight, okay? In fact, don't start a fight with anybody, okay? Just show up there. I want to show you around my hometown of Baltimore, and try not to get in a fight with, like, I don't know, Superman. So as they go down to Baltimore, everyone's like, or Scalix and Zilius are both like, this place sucks. You guys haven't even learned how to make spherical buildings. Like, this place sucks. And Guy's like, all right, well, screw you guys. Here, I'm sending you a list of coordinates to places you might find cool. I'm going off to do my own thing. So he flies off, and they do their own thing. And meanwhile, Guy flies off to Norway. He goes to a cabin, knocks on the door, and as the door opens, he's immediately blasted with like a snow ice vortex that turns him into an ice cube. And standing there is Tora, aka Ice, who she's not happy to see Guy. And he's just like, wow, Tora, that was ice cold. And she's like, God, I hate you so much. So he melts himself out of the ice block, walks in, and he's basically saying like, hey, yeah, I got a new look. You may notice red. That's kind of a thing now. And he basically shows up and says, yeah, when we last left, we were arguing with each other a lot. And I know that I have issues with anger, and that's a whole thing. But now I've joined the Red Lanterns, and their whole thing is anger. Like, I'm deep down in rage. And Ice is like, is that supposed to be a good thing? You're saying it like it's a good thing. It sounds like a bad thing. And he's like, no, you don't understand. Like, I had problems controlling my anger. But now that I'm in the Red Lantern Corps, like all that I could think about if I didn't control it is rage. But like clearly I'm not doing that. So I must be even better at controlling my anger than before. And she's like, okay, cool. Did you stop drinking? And he's like, no, I'm not there yet, but maybe. So at that point we cut to Scalix and Zilius, and they're like, they go to the Grand Canyon. They're like, it's a hole. Who cares? Next, they go to the Red Sea, and they're like, this is our blood lake is red. This is just water. And then they go to Paris, and there's this giant like sphere there, and Zilius is like, thank you. Finally, someone got it right. And at that point, it's like, all right, well, the final place that we can go to is a place called Las Vegas. I don't know if it's going to be worth it. But before they can go anywhere, they're stopped by Shadow Thief, who, if you didn't know from the, I think, Hawkman books, Shadow Thief is all about hunting down aliens. Like, not imperatively a villain, but definitely doesn't like aliens. So she traces their, like, signature and says, like, I've get out of my planet. And he's just like, you do understand the suit you're wearing, the shadow suit, is from an alien technology, right? Like, that's probably what you're smelling. And she's like, oh, well, still, either way, it doesn't matter. I'm using it to hunt down aliens. And Zilius is like, hey, wait a minute, hold on. You're from Earth, right? And she's like, yeah. It's like, what's a testicle? And then she just loses it, starts blasting both of them. They start using their Red Lantern energy on her. Her suit just absorbs it because it's light, so it's just able to absorb it. But then Zilius shows up and barfs the like napalm blood all over her, and she's like, "Oh God, all right, that's gross." So we see Guy still talking to Tora, basically trying to fix things up, saying like, hey, look, we had some good times. Maybe we should try it again. And she's like, yeah, no, we did have good times, but they always resulted in more bad times. That's why we stopped. And she's about to say no, but then all of a sudden Guy gets a call from Scalix saying, hey, we may have accidentally, fought against someone. We could use some backup. And he's like, hey, I got to go solve a problem. How about you come with? You watch me. I will solve it without even throwing a punch. That's how I can show you that I'm in control of things now. And she's like, okay, sure. So, final page, we got Rancor and Bleeze arriving at the energy signature of Ratchet's ring. And as they land, they find a tiny little cabin. And it's like, all right, that's weird. Why would they be in here? And as Rancor pushes open the door, they see inside is Atrocitus and Dexstar, along with the new Red Lantern. That's like a bug-looking creature. So, yeah, there's a lot there. I like it, personally. I think this is a super solid issue of building up a bunch of different plots, getting to play nice with each other. Obviously, we already had Atrocitus getting his ring back in previous issues. We had the idea of Ratchet's ring going out. That's a good way to get them re-engaged with each other. I think this is smart writing all about. I'm really enjoying it. As for the ice plot, it has potential. I don't think it's quite there yet. I want to see what they do with it next issue, but it has potential to be something that can really give some more motive to Guy's character, because right now he does feel a little bit listless. So yeah, overall, I'm going to say this is I'm going to give it an 8. I really do enjoy it. I think it's a solid book, and I'm looking forward to next month's issue. Aquaman number 27, written by Jeff Parker, art by Paul Pelletier and Netho Diaz. So last issue we had a thing called the Ketacon, I believe, attacking a city, and it's some big Atlantean monster thing. And Aquaman connected to it mentally, even though it was way too big for him to handle, and he saw some stuff. So this issue we pick up with a man who was asking around Amnesty Bay about, hey, anybody know where I can find Aquaman? And he was completely shut out, until he reaches a waitress in this issue. And the waitress is like, yeah, no, I did the same thing when I first showed up in town. For some reason, they got like a love-hate relationship with the guy. But if you want to know where Aquaman is, whenever he does come back, he's over in that lighthouse over there. That's where he usually stays. So off the coast of Iceland, the Ketacon has frozen in place. It's no longer attacking buildings and such. But Aquaman is standing there like trying to mentally control it. And he's able to see a huge battle and such where the Ketacon is used as a weapon by the King of Atlantis. And it's like, yes, I am their people. I am their champion. I don't fail. And then the king tells me to go out and crush enemies of Atlantis, but that's not what I do. That's not who I am. I don't want to do that. And then all of a sudden he breaks contact. The monster starts rampaging through the city again. And Aquaman gets called up by Mera. Mera's like, hey, we lost contact. What was going on? He's like, look, I know you told me not to do it, but I connected with the creature and I saw some stuff. It had some memories. I don't know. I'm still trying to sort that all out. Anyway, I'll talk to you soon. So at that point, it starts attacking a building that's filled with people. So Aquaman has to specifically like go in and cut off the like tentacles that are grabbing in people and pulling it into the mouth of the beast. And watching all of this happen from a nearby base, Triton base, is just a group of people who are like, okay, all right, well, it's probably been in hibernation for like 3,000 years or so. It's going to be quite some time, and it's probably was living down near magma vents. And we see the people watching this fight, and then Dr. Shin comes in, and he's like, what is wrong with you people? You guys woke up this monster, and now you're just watching Aquaman go and try to save other people and try to take out this beast. And you guys are just watching? You're not doing anything to help? Because you're just hoping Aquaman takes it down and you can swoop in and harvest what you need. You guys are awful. How am I the only person down here with a conscience? And so Shin just like storms off, and it's like, okay, well, maybe he's not going to be help. And the other people are like, well, he's going to have to be because he's the only one who knows anything about Atlantis. So, yeah, we need him to be cool. So at that point, somewhere on their base, like a vent or something breaks. So they call in this maintenance guy named Coombs. And he's like, yeah, I'll swim out there and have it done by dinner time. So we see Aquaman still trying to fight the beast. And he's like trying to command it. He's like, look, you answer to the King of Atlantis. I am the King of Atlantis. Cut it out. But it still just continues going through and even stomps on Aquaman. To which point we get a little like memory thing of him at the lighthouse, him talking to his dad. And the dad's like, yeah, no, I picked this up after your grandmother. She picked it up after your grandfather died out at sea, and she did a great job. And nowadays, most everything with the lighthouse is automated. But, I kept on doing it because this is, you come out here and you show people the way. That's something that's admirable. You enjoy doing that. So as Aquaman gets up, he is handed his trident back by one of the locals, and he's like, all right, thanks. Don't worry, I've got this handled. So meanwhile, a bunch of jets come in, and they keep on firing at the beast. It fires back with some like atomic breath stuff. And we see Aquaman is basically trying to bury his trident into the creature's hard shell exterior. And he does manage to get in a little bit, and he finds a gap. He finds a tiny little gap that he's able to lodge the trident inside. And so he's like, all right, trident's in there. I only get one shot at this. He goes over to a nearby building that was destroyed, grabs a steel girder, and just swats the trident through the beast's brain. And so as Mera and a bunch of the other Atlanteans are coming up to see, they're like, my God, the Karakon, it truly lives. And then it just falls down dead right in front of them. And everyone's like, well, guess Aquaman had this handled. Didn't need our help to begin with. And he totally took down our legendary defender. So that's sweet. So meanwhile, we see the Trident sub come up. And it's like, okay, we're here. He's taking out the monster. We're going to take out whatever we need. And we see the Trident, which is coated in like brain goop. And they go over to that. And they're like, oh, get some of that goop. Super useful. So Mera comes up to Aquaman, and it's like, hey, what was going on there? And he's like, I don't know. Like it was sending me images of its mind. Even now that it's dead, it's still hitting me with like sensory stuff, like a dying battery charge. But I don't know what to make of it yet. And Mera's like, okay, hey, you've been through a lot recently. Maybe we should head back to Amnesty Bay for a little bit. And he's like, you know what? Yeah, I was thinking the same way. But as he goes with Mera and looks around, all of a sudden the beast starts heating up and just basically starts dissolving itself into ash. And it's like, hey, what's going on here? And one of the Atlanteans explains like, yeah, no, it's an old like defensive thing so that other people couldn't get Atlantis' monsters. They would, on death, turn in like superheated, and all that would be left is burning crater. So at that point, a boat comes up and says like, Aquaman, hey, Aquaman. And the Atlanteans are like, he's a king. Why don't they address him as a king? And Mera's like, oh, shut up. He enjoys it. And he's like, hey, Aquaman, I don't know if you recognize me. I was in a boat that you just saved over there. My entire crew. Thanks you so much. We owe you our lives. And he's like, hey, not a problem. It's all cool. So he's back. One of the Atlanteans says, all right, you ready to go back to Atlantis? And he's like, no, I don't think I'm going going down there. But before anything else can happen, he gets a little more of a blast from the Karakan's mind, but not from this area, from way far away and moving fast away. It turns out it's the Triton thing that picked up a bit of the brain goop. And he senses that it's moving away at top speed, and we see Coombs is repairing that vent, which, as he just accidentally cuts himself on a piece of metal, and as there's blood in the water spreading out, we see a bunch of sharks coming up to attack him. I don't know what that's going to do, if that's related to like the brain stuff at all, but we got a character named Coombs, so we'll see what that happens. I'm sure this is all just set up for like whatever Jeff Parker's doing for his first arc here. It feels like we are building to something, but I don't feel it yet. I don't have a good grasp on like what it feels like. It's going to be the Triton stuff, but like I'm not clear as to what that is. So all in all, this issue is fine. It just doesn't feel like it's properly building up to whatever it is it's doing. It feels like it's kind of keeping that as an undercurrent, no pun intended. So all in all, I think it's a flat 7. It's not bad by any means, but I can't really say it's going anywhere yet, or at least it's not going anywhere obvious. So yeah, it's a fine book. It's just slow paced as of now. The Flash number 27, written by Brian Buccellato, art by Patrick Zurcher. So it's kind of the start of a new arc here. We open up in the Midwest Territory in 1848. There's a rainstorm going on, and there's some creepy dude looking like the Undertaker who comes in, and he talks to this guy named Sutter who's digging out gems. And Sutter's like, hey, I just found all these gems, and I was totally going to tell you about all of them. You got to believe me. And the Undertaker named Marshall is like, I don't trust you at all. You were going to take them all for yourself. And so he picks up a pickaxe and seemingly kills this guy. And we get Flash's narration saying that obsession is dangerous and it makes people do crazy things. And we see, meanwhile, in Keystone, there's an entire street that's just nothing but jewelry stores, and every single one of them has been hit. So Flash rushes in, he checks all the places. Nobody's been injured, so he's able to just go straight to the people who did it. And going down into the subway, we see fighting each other is Chroma and Tar Pit. Turns out that they thought that each other were going to steal all of the diamonds, and so they weren't even able to escape before they started bickering with each other. And Flash is like, guys, you know the rogues at least usually get away before they start fighting, right? Also, why did you hit up every single store on the street? That's just stupid. And so Chroma goes to blast Flash with his rainbow powers, literally saying, taste the rainbow. And Flash just punches him in the stomach, and Chroma's like, oh God, I'm going to throw up. So then Tar Pit's like, all right, now it's my turn. And he like melts a crater down underneath this subway station, to which Flash just runs over to a fire truck nearby, grabs a fire extinguisher, and puts out Tar Pit. And he's like, there, no problems, all good. But as he looks down into this crater that Tar Pit has made, he sees that there is just a bunch of skeletons down here. And it's like, okay, what is this? So now is Barry Allen with the rest of the police force. He's down there investigating, and it's like, all right, there's at least 17 different bodies here. This is the work of a serial killer from like way back in the day. They say, looking at the level of decomp, they were dumped here years ago, and like we may have never found this guy. We got to figure out who it is. And then coming down the ladder into this crater is Captain Fry, and it's like, hey, Barry, we caught this guy. Yeah, no, this is the Broomhill Butcher. His name is Hollis Holden. He's serving 32 life sentences. We just never found all of the bodies, and he would never fess up to it. But we're going to run diagnostics on these, and we're going to confirm them to match with him and his way of killing. And Barry's like, I'm sorry, I grew up in that area of Broomhill. Why have I not heard of this guy? And it's like, we don't like talking about it. You were too young as well. Why would we share that with a kid? So at that point, they turn to Detective Forrest, and they're like, Forrest, can you take this? And he's like, no, my caseload is full. You want me to take on a serial killer as well? Not going to happen. And Barry's like, hey, I can do it. I've got nothing down in cold cases. This would be great. I can easily do this. And Forrest is like, yeah, no, all cool. So Singh gives it to Barry, but then Captain Fry comes in and says, no, this is Forrest's thing. Barry's not touching this. And they all ask for a reason why. And he's like, I'm the captain. I say so. That's why. So Barry's talking to, oh God, why am I blanking on her name? The girlfriend, whatever her name is, Patty. That's it. And she's like, well, that doesn't sound like him. Did you talk to him about it? And he's like, I mean, not yet. He's the captain. I gotta do what he says. But still, I can at least help him behind the scenes for whatever Forrest finds. I'll set up a timeline. So he uses his super speed to like very quickly set up like a murder board with all of the yarn and stuff. And we see the victims start getting identified. However, a lot of them had died within the past 10 years, which was within the time that this serial killer has been in jail. So they realize, like, okay, he couldn't have killed them all. There's some new blood here. There's either a copycat or someone who worked with them. Something's going on. So as he looks at all the people who went missing around that time, because that's how they're cross-referencing to find who these murder people are, they see Nora Allen. Barry's mom was one of the people who were killed around this time. And I guess in this continuity, it wasn't confirmed that it was Thawne. I thought that was a thing, but no, her murder is still a mystery. So Barry goes to talk to his dad in jail, and he brings up, yeah, the Broomhill Butcher. I think he killed mom. And the dad's just like, no, don't get into this. That's not how it was. Don't do it. Don't do this to yourself. And he's just like, no, look, it all makes sense. I've got all these statements and stuff of accomplices. I'm going to prove that mom was killed by this guy and get you out of jail. And the dad gets pissed off saying like, stop, I'm not listening anymore. I'm going back to my cell. Don't do this. And he goes back away. So Barry goes into the jail cell of the serial killer as Flash. And he's like, hey, we found a bunch more bodies. You had an accomplice. Who was it? And the guy doesn't talk, but he very clearly looks disturbed by this. And Barry notices, and he's like, you know who it is. Give me a name. And Hollis tries to like sneak around him, says like, oh, it's dinner time. They're going to notice if I'm not there. And he's like, well, then make it fast. Tell me. Even if it's not like whatever you're scared of, I don't care. Just give me a name. And he says, it doesn't matter. He's already dead, and so am I. And this guy jumps off the 3rd level of cells. So then Flash runs down and like grabs him, holds on to a nearby ledge, where then he is attacked by Girder. He's like, hey, Flash, nice to see you. Stomp. And tries to get into a fight with Flash. And Flash is like, I don't have time for this. So he steals one of the guard's guns and just starts beating Girder over the head with it enough to knock him out. And he's like, there, fine. Anyway, Hollis, give me a damn name. And he's like, oh, okay, it's Archibald Dillon. So Barry goes and talks to Captain Fry and is basically like, hey, I got a name. I will. He is killed. He's down in the cemetery. Let me exhume the body. I'll take a bit of DNA and I'll like run it against the DNA that was left in my mom's crime scene. And Captain Fry's like, no, you don't understand what you're messing with here. Stop doing this. And he's like, why? What is the problem? Why don't you want me to figure this out about my mom? And he's like, you don't understand what was going on with your mom. And Captain Fry makes the reveal of, me and your mom had a thing. Like when you were young, me and her were seeing each other. And he's just like, what? You didn't tell me? All these years you were raising me. You didn't tell me this? And he basically just storms out of the room as Captain Fry says, like, still not giving you permission. This guy didn't kill Nora. So Flash is super pissed off. He goes down to the cemetery. He's like, look, I'm going to dig it up super speed. I'll get the DNA. I'll dig it back, or I'll put it right back. No problem. And as he digs up the coffin this guy's supposed to be in, turns out it's empty, and then all of a sudden he is attacked with a ghostly pickaxe from behind. That's the ghost screams out saying, Fletcher must die. So don't know what that means. Honest to God, the last 2 pages are a little bit of a like, okay, I guess this is how we're ending the book. I guess that's the biggest problem I have with it, is that it's a very sudden ending. It builds up a lot of things to begin with, but it's a very sudden ending. So I think it's pretty obvious that the arc words of this is obsession is dangerous. It's literally the first thing Barry said in this issue, and Barry is obsessed about finding this killer because he believes it'll lead to the killer of his mom. I get that. I see where that book is going. I'm just hoping there's a bit more twists and turns along the way that are going to keep it interesting. Having a ghostly pickaxe guy, yeah, that's kind of what I'm talking about. As for like the new romance angle of Captain Fry was doing a thing with Nora, I'm not a big fan of going back and retconning that stuff, but if that's what they want to play with, hopefully they have good reason for it. All in all, I think this issue is probably a 7.5. I enjoyed the reading of it. It set up a good mystery, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the rest of the arc covers it. All-Star Western number 27, written by Justin Gray and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by Moritat. So last issue, Superman showed up at the end of a Jonah Hex arriving in Metropolis adventure, and then this issue just continues on with that, where Superman reaches out and he's like, hey, you're Jonah Hex. I've been reading about you and your exploits recently. What brings you to Metropolis? And Jonah's like, okay, you may call yourself Superman, but like, no man I've ever met can fly like that, so I'm not calling you Superman. And Gina's there like, dude, come on, it's Superman. Why you gotta be so mean to Superman? And Jonah's like, I'm just calling it as I see it here. And Superman's like, it's all right. I hear you're a time traveler. That's pretty crazy, right, Jonah? And he's like, yeah, kinda. You know how I can get back home? And he's like, well, I understand what it's like to be a stranger in a strange land and miss your home and your people. And this whole time, as they're debating, like Jonah and Superman, Gina's just standing there recording it all on her phone like, oh my God, this is awesome. So at that point, Jonah's like, all right, well, how about you show me how you fly, Superman? And he's like, oh, totally, will do. And he just picks Jonah up and flies him over Metropolis. And he's like, oh, is that everything you like, Jonah? And he's like, I'm going to be sick. Oh God, this isn't right. Man isn't supposed to be this high up. So flies him somewhere. I mean, it seems like it's a desert area, but this is Metropolis, so I have no idea where they're at. But they fly him out, and Superman explains like, yeah, no, I'm from Krypton. It's an alien thing. I know that a lot of what I do doesn't make sense to you. And he's just like, look, it isn't natural. That's all I need to know. And Jonah pulls his gun out on Superman. And it's not like he does anything about it, but he just kind of like holds it there for a minute. And he's like, is there anybody left of this Krypton of yours? And he's like, nah, I'm the only one left. It's just me. My parents are spent me in a ship. And he's like, oh yeah, you saying you're from the stars? And he's like, yeah, I guess that's a thing, but is it any weirder than man time traveling? He's like, all right, got me there. What else can you do? And Superman just picks up a giant boulder, throws it into the sky, and then zaps it with his heat vision. And Jonah's like, dude, what are you? And he's like, I told you, I'm sure this is overwhelming for you. He's like, no, I get you got special powers. I can accept whatever you throw at me there. But like, you claim that you're doing good. I've seen you with all of these incredible powers, but there's still like war and disease and people hurting each other out there. Why aren't you doing something about that? And Superman's like, it's not that easy. I can't just make up people's mind for them. They have to want to do it themselves. And he's like, yeah, no, I get what you're saying there. But like the last time we had a guy show up and say that, oh, we can all be nicer to each other and feed each other and be cool to each other, we hung him on a cross. And Superman's like, okay, if you're not Zack Snyder, I don't like you making that comparison, but I mean, yeah, I'm optimistic that people are able to change for the better. And Jonah's like, no, they aren't. Like, that's not a way that people are going to be. So at that point, Superman's just like, hold on a second. He flies off, flies back, and he's like, sorry, there was a hostage situation I had to take care of. And Jonah's like, well, I guess that's doing something at the very least. And he starts walking away, and Superman's like, hey, man, you cool? And he's like, no, I'm not cool. I don't. I'm guessing that one of your powers is not time traveling. He's like, no, sorry, I can't do that. Is there anything else I could do for you, though? He's like, well, I met up with John Constantine. He said, find the House of Mystery. And Superman's like, oh, John. How's he doing nowadays? And Jonah's just like, of course you guys know each other. Obviously you would. But he asks him where the House of Mystery is. And he's just like, yeah, I'm not really sure, but I can ask around. I do have some connections in that side of the world. And Jonah is just like, all right, cool. And Superman's like, can I give you like a little bit of advice about guns? Just a little bit. And Jonah's like, no, I'd like to get back to my girl now. So he meets back up with Gina, and Gina's like, hey, look, you seem like you've been a little upset since Superman brought you back. I've got a cool thing. How about you want to check it out? And he's like, yeah, as long as I can get some booze on the way there. And we see leading to the Metropolis Museum And they do the whole bit of like, oh, they take off any metal you have, and he unloads like a huge amount of weapons into their little dish, and he's just like, is this a joke? And he's like, no. So they go, and there's like an Old West exhibit and such like that. And Jonah's like, oh yeah, I knew that guy. I put him down, and I didn't realize he had so many kids. And Gina's like, does that bother you? He's like, no. He broke the law. That's on his side. But it turns out this museum has a Jonah Hex exhibition room, and he goes in there, and the guy's like, wow, yeah, that's quite the costume you got on there. If I didn't know any better, I'd say you were the real Jonah Hex. And he's like, yeah, sure, anyway. And this guide kind of just leads them around the room, and he's like, oh, here's an axe that we believe belonged to Jonah. We don't know if it's a recreation or the original. And Jonah's like, no, it's the original. That's my axe. And he's going to reach for it, and Gina's like, don't even think about it. And then we see like all of these stories that were told, and it's like, yeah, we heard stories about a woman he was with, Tallulah Black. It's apparently there's rumors that they settled down together, rumors that she died before him, that he died before her, all sort of things. And we, it's basically just a bit more of like going through like, oh, how does history regard Jonah Hex? And it's essentially as a bloodthirsty killer. He doesn't have like a romantic streak like any other sort of Western folklore hero or anything. He's just a killer. So finally the guard leads him over and said, this is the prize of our collection. We got it off a curiosity shop that was selling it after like a circus freak show sort of thing. It's the actual body of Jonah Hex. And they show him, and he's like, he looks like a wax figure. It's not like he's like deformed or anything, but he's dressed up in like super not his style clothes, like think Back to the Future 3 kind of stuff. And Jonah looks at him and he's like, that's not me. That's not me. I'm not cool with that. And he like tries to throw a punch. The thing's made of plexiglass, so he just storms out past the guards. And Gina comes running out, and he's like, I'm sorry, I didn't know they had like that. Now clearly that would be upsetting to anybody. I thought the rest of it would be cool though. You would be able to see all these things from your past. And Jonah's like, well, you thought wrong. And he just drives off away without her. So he leaves Metropolis. He goes to this little saloon out of town. He sits down at a table alone, tells the barkeep, bottle of whiskey and keep him coming, until finally, end of the night, he's too drunk to even stand. He gets thrown out into the garbage behind the bar to sleep it off. And as he comes to in the middle of the night, he staggers over to his bike, kicks it on, and just starts driving down the road. And he sees a big bright light ahead of him, and he says, Tallulah. And we see 3 panels of his bike in ruins, a truck driver calling 911, and Jonah bleeding out all over the pavement. So, I think this issue does more to characterize Jonah than the past 30 issues have, like, combined. It's really done a lot here of saying, okay, here's a man who went out of time, and it does this idea of, like, he's staring at how people not only are going to remember him, but, like, he's staring at his own death in a way. And it's just, I don't know, there's something so good about that, of him, like, thinking back to all the things he missed, all the ways that, like, he didn't get to end his story back then. I don't know. It's there's something to it. I really hope it continues to explore down that path, because I'm super interested in it. The Superman stuff at the beginning was also good. I will say, though, it was just kind of like, I don't want to say preachy, but it was very much of like, oh, here's a man with a certain set of morals going up against Superman. And they kind of just argue about like which set of morals is the more just, I've seen it done before. This doesn't do anything new with that. But all in all, fine issue just for that ending, more or less. I'm really into that sort of side of things. So I'm going to give this one I'll give it a 7.5. I think it was really good. I'm looking forward to seeing if we can continue down this path of Jonah's desperation of, like, essentially a death wish, more or less. Teen Titans number 27, written by Scott Lobdell, art by Tyler Kirkham and Scott McDaniel. Last issue was basically the reveal of Kid Flash was a terrorist in the future, and then he went back to the past with a mind wipe and tried to do good. And the Teen Titans don't know how to handle that. So this issue picks up with Solstice just chilling outside, and she recounts her own, like, origin story that she was 13 years old, and there was a plane crash. Her father, and her sister were, like, stranded out in the wilderness, and for, like, 3 days, they were just trapped out there. And then all of a sudden on the 4th day, she woke up a mile above the ground, and she had, like, burning sensation. Like, she was able to, like, fire off these energy blasts that were visible from miles and miles away. And she was wondering like, oh, who's going to rescue me? I'm stuck up here. And then she realized like, wait a minute, no, I now have the power to rescue all of us. So there's that. And when we see she's, talking to Robin saying like, yeah, isn't that the point of the power? Like we have powers in order to make things better. Like what right do we have to judge Kid Flash if he was just trying to make things better? Isn't that the whole thing of it? And Red Robin's like, yes, that's fine. I get what you're saying, but like he killed people, like a lot of people. We don't do that. And she's like, yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I understand. But like, I guess I just fundamentally see it differently there. And he's like, no, look, I understand what you're coming from here, that there is like a greater good, but like, it's different in that situation. She's like, is it? Like I was in the culling, remember that? That's how we met, and I had to kill people there every day. And he explains like, well, that's different. You would have been killed in the difference. And it's like, well, wouldn't Barr have been killed if it wasn't like if he didn't stand up for himself there? So they basically debate the morality of all this. And Red Robin explains like, look, I'm sorry that you had to go through the culling at all. It's my fault. If I had just made the Titans earlier, maybe we could have saved you before it would have been a problem. And she's like, no, don't apologize for what could have been. Like that's not the point of it. But like we all have this, like our actions are our own. We make those choices. So basically at that point we see Red Robin and her sharing like a silent little moment, and Red Robin notices all of these ships, like dozens upon dozens of ships, are coming in and landing. So we cut over to Kid Flash, who's just looking up at Wonder Girl, like, what are you looking at, huh? What's going on? And Wonder Girl's like, I don't know what I'm looking at. What is this? What even is your real name? Are you a superhero? Are you a teammate? Are you a terrorist? What's going on? And Bart's just like, look, you tell me. You saw everything I did. You saw that I was trying to do good. And when I came back to your time, all I was a hero the whole time. Clearly, I'm a good person. I'm a soldier whose side lost. That's all I am. So you got to help me out here. And she's just like, stop playing me. And he's like, yeah, all right, you got me. But seriously, there's a war coming and you're going to have to pick a side. So then we go to Superboy. And I'm just going to say it's just 2 straight pages of Superboy being like, God, I want to kill the Teen Titans. Jesus, I want to snap all their necks. God, that's all I want. So, yeah, that's literally all that page is. But at that point, we have Breen 3 come in saying, hey, it's time. We're about to start his trial. If you guys want to be up front and center, we got a special area for you. And we show that basically this entire tribunal area is being filled up with royals and dignitaries from across this galactic empire thing going on. And they're all here to basically watch him burn. Like they're here to watch the guilty verdict. They already know what's going to happen. And even Robin's picking up on that. He's like, yeah, no, this feels more like a mock trial than anything else. It feels like the mind's already been made up. So, by the way, there's one little joke in here of how there's only one law sayer because they only have one law. And then Red Robin's like, wow, that sounds depressingly like the thing that we had back home called the internet message boards. Yeah. Anyway, the tribunal begins and they basically say like, all right, so our whole thing is, he was willing to give up his own people. He was willing to work with us. We sent him back as a witness protection, and he did good back in his own time. So the question becomes, is that enough to override the guilt that he had before? And immediately everyone in the audience is like, nah, screw him, hang him, kill him, shoot him, do whatever we got to do. And everyone, like, Teen Titans are looking on like, okay, yeah, that's pretty much to be expected. But it turns out that the trial is also being broadcast down into the prison cells below where all of his, like, other compatriots are currently being held so that they can watch how he betrayed them. And all the audience is once again like, yeah, awesome, shoot him, kill him, hang him, do whatever. So at that point, they bring forth Kid Flash and they're like, hey, all right, look, your parents followed a false religion, one that didn't follow the government. And as such, you were led down a false path to begin with. And then you fought for that kind. How do you plead? And he basically steps up and says like, look, truth is, you don't get it. none of you get it. None of you understand. Like, this isn't because of what you did to my family. This isn't because of what you did to me or, like, even any of the people down below. This is just because I wanted justice, I wanted peace, and I found a way that I could change things myself. So I had to wage a war in order to get peace. So you think that I regret any of the stuff I did to you? No, I don't. I did it all. I'm guilty as hell. And at that moment, there's a massive explosion. And the like airlock that all of them are in opens up. Royals and dignitaries are all flying out. We see the Teen Titans save like the judges and a few others, but a couple of them are just like gone. And that's when Kid Flash goes like full supervillain. And Teen Titans are like, dude, did you like plan this? And Kid Flash is like, yeah, of course I did. I knew all of these royals and dignitaries would want to see me hang, so we set up this whole thing. From the beginning, me getting captured was part of the plan. Like, this was always going to be part of it. And now my entire, like, rebellion fleet is showing up. They're going to shoot out all of these people, and we're finally going to kill all these higher-ups once and for all. And all the Teen Titans are like, bro, that's like a slaughter. They aren't soldiers. They're the higher-ups. And he's like, yeah, exactly. They're the higher-ups. They're the ones calling the shots. So at that point, the Teen Titans are like, dude, we're not going to stand by and let you kill these people. And Kid Flash is like, well, there's a very small part of me that's sorry to hear you say that, but ultimately I got to do this. And he orders his men to kill them all. So Kid Flash versus Teen Titans. I got to say, last issue gave the backstory, and I was kind of interested in it. I was kind of into like, okay, finally this thing we've hinted at throughout the whole series, we finally got, and I'm happy to have it. But it didn't really feel like it was its own issue. It was just an expository thing. This issue finally goes like full tilt on it. And I gotta say, we're like super close to the end of the series. We got like 3 more issues in an annual. And this is the most I've been interested in the whole thing. You know, like this is the most where it feels like, oh, we've actually got something cool going on here. We've got a villain with like pathos and like a reason to care about him. Wow. Good job, Scott Lobdell. You'll never hear me utter those words again. Yeah, no, it's a good issue. All in all, I got to say that it's a good issue. It's surprisingly how interested I really was. It does kind of slog in the middle, like I said, that Superboy bit where he's like, "Oh God, I just want to kill all these people." Like, okay, either like do it or stop talking about it. Like, give me the whole reason I'm interested in the Kid Flash thing is he's actually following through. The Superboy thing, I'm like, shut up. I'm done with this unless you do something. So yeah, all in all, solid issue. I'd probably give this one. I'm gonna give it a 7.5. It's very close to the 8, but it just doesn't quite get there. But it's if the plot continues on down this path where it's actually like pathos and like we have to care about why Kid Flash is doing this stuff and the choices he makes, I'm down. I'm super down for that. Green Team Teen Trillionaires number 8, written by Art Baltazar and Franco, art by Ig Guara. This is the final issue. And in the last issue, God, where even begin? Okay, the Green Team broke into this rich guy's house who's basically the mastermind of everything. And it turns out that Commodore's dad, who was a supervillain from the first arc, is still alive. And he's also here. So they basically recap all that on the first page here. Also, his dad now has some like metal mind stuff that he has embedded in him so that he's able to like control it, and that's because of how Commodore seemingly killed him last time. And we show the full Green Team lineup, which is JP, whose nickname is Yowie, Commodore, whose nickname is apparently Technocrat, Cecilia, whose nickname is Apparition, and Mo, who's apparently Super Awesome Guy. And that's because Mo's the one who named all of them. And I'm not going to go over the power set, but basically it's in order: Sasquatch, Tech Control, Visible Girl, and Weird. So then we also got like a scientist and then 2 other people here. Anyway, whole point of this is that the fight starts breaking out. Riot, which is Commodore's dad, starts being able to clone himself, which that was his power before, and he just starts creating clones upon clones to come after and attack the Green Team. So Commodore starts firing off like metal bits in order to hold him back. With a few that make it through, Mo jumps in the way and he's able to like phase them into his body and they teleport out the back of him. And then they question Mo. It's like, hey, can you like teleport them other places? And he's like, let me try. So he teleports them like outside the building and then tries farther away, like Rome. And he's like, yeah, I can teleport them. So he works on doing that. JP is in Sasquatch form and he just starts destroying as many of them as he can. He's not able to be reasoned with at this moment. But Cecilia's like, hey, he'll listen to me. I'm just going to let him do his thing and then I'll deal with him. So at that point we see Riot comes over and like starts taunting Commodore, being like, "Oh, I'm you. After you attacked me last time, you cured me of my illness, my debilitating illness, and now my whole plan is that I'm gonna kill you, so that way I can have your money back." Ha 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 ha! And so he gets blasted, and the fight basically just continues on with like all different sides here. We show the bodyguard of Mo is basically like, "Hey, look, this is getting worse by the minute. We need to get out of here. This is too much for us." And Mo's like, you know what? Agreed. Even without Belichick, the rich guy, like Riot's still even a bit too much for us. We're going to have to get everyone and bail out. So at that point, Belichick is talking to his men being like, hey, kill all of them. And he's just like, well, sir, you know, this situation's getting a bit out of hand. How about we just bail? And Belichick's like, good idea, let's go. So the only one left in the fight really is Riot. But Belichick does say, like, you haven't seen the last of me before he bails. So at that point, Cecilia is like, the whole plan is to bail. Cecilia needs to go over and talk to JP, calm him down. And she does her best to get over, but like, he is in a frenzy. He is unable to be talked with at all at this point. So at that point, we got Commodore versus Riot, and it's basically just a one-on-one, but every step that Commodore takes against him, Riot just like clones and is easily able to keep doing that. And Riot's taunting him, saying like, oh, this is like, I will kill you and then I'm going to torture your friends for quite some time and I'm going to extend their miseries as long as possible. And Commodore takes that personally. He's like, you know what? Screw this. I'm just going to kill you. I don't want to go that far, but I'm going to do this. And he uses his like control of technology and stuff to start bringing down the whole building that they're in. He like literally tears it apart shred to shred. And he's like, yep, you know, I always wanted superpowers and maybe the way I did it was not the smartest way, but you know what? I'm not going to regret this for the rest of my life. I'm going to do something about it. I'm over the sins of my father. So he starts trying to bring down the building. Cecilia finally gets over to JP and starts trying to calm him down. Mo's just trying to like get everyone gathered so that he can teleport him out of there. But like he can't get a hold of Commodore. Commodore is too focused in this. And Commodore's like, hey, I'm sorry. This is how it ends. Get everyone out of here. I'm out. Like this is just me. So Cecilia locks hands with JP, and it seems like the whole building comes down on Commodore and his dad and the rest of the green team, honestly. And as the buildings collapse, we see Cecilia's hands reach out from the rubble, and it's followed by the entire rest of the team, who has all linked hands together with Cecilia and therefore have gotten her apparition abilities. So they all come out on top of the rubble. They look at what they've done to Chicago, and it's like, yeah, maybe we should get out of here. Mo, can you teleport us out here? So Mo teleports him back out to like the green team headquarters. And at that point, the bodyguard comes out being like, dude, you brought down a building in the middle of Chicago. I think that's a bit too far. And Commodore's like, look, I needed to stop him. It was the only way. I was counting on Cecilia to get us out of there. It was all under control. And essentially at that point, they just kind of stop. Like they JP calls up and he's like, I can't believe that we all have these superpowers now. Why is this happening to us? And Commodore's like, what do you mean? It's awesome. We're the green team. And everyone's like, dude, we're never going to get anything cool done with a name like the green team. It's such a stupid name. And he's like, yeah, you're right, but we're even better than superheroes because we have powers and money. By the way, I have an idea. And then we cut over to Teen Titans HQ, where the Commodore's Batmobile that he bought from an auction comes cruising in. Red Robin's like, that ain't the Batmobile. Everyone fall in. We're under attack. And Commodore pops his head out and he's like, hey, Teen Titans, just wanted to talk. I'm Commodore. You may have heard of me. I'm super rich. I'd like to buy the licensing rights to Teen Titans. Here's a sack full of money. I'm buying the Teen Titans. And that's how it ends. He just tries to buy the Teen Titans. This book never really came together. And that's a shame. I think that the early issues had some promise to them. They had an idea as to like what they were going for. But by the time you hit the ending, it just feels like it never really had not even a moral, just like it never had a thing it was aiming for. Like even plot-wise and not even messaging, just like what were we really doing this whole time? Like I thought maybe it was the Belichick thing, but then in the end, the father just came back and it kind of just felt like they realized they were getting canceled and they couldn't develop Belichick into a real villain. So they just brought back the original one and beat him again. So, and then the ending with the Teen Titans, I mean, it's kind of a funny note, but it also feels like the characters haven't learned anything. It doesn't feel like I feel like the basis of the story should have been this group gets powers and throughout whatever machinations, they realize money isn't everything. But they didn't. And quite literally, they say that we're better than superheroes because we have money. So, no lessons were learned, I guess. Anyway, it's not an awful series. I understand why it wasn't collected. I can understand why people weren't scrambling to get a trade paperback of Green Team. It's just kind of a weird little thing in the middle of the New 52 that I don't know what the point was when it's all said and done. So I'm going to give this I'll give it like I was going to say 6, but honestly, I think I'm going to go with a 5.5. It is carrying the burden of the previous 7 issues on it. Like, I'm kind of rating it lower for that, but yeah, no, it just wasn't a great series. 5.5. And that's it. That's all the comics came out from DC Comics this January 29th, 2014. And again, I want to try to keep this short because I know I'm way over on time, but DC did some weird stuff next week. They couldn't help themselves, so I do have to explain a few things. But before I do that, let me just tell you the basic comics coming out. Next week, we have Batwing, Detective Comics, Action Comics, Green Lantern, Red Lanterns, Earth 2, Green Arrow, The Movement, Stormwatch, Phantom Stranger, Swamp Thing, Forever Evil, and Forever Evil Arkham War. So weird stuff to talk about. Forever Evil and Forever Evil Arkham War on the same week. I don't know the order that's supposed to go in. I will find out by the time we do that. Green Lantern and Red Lanterns. That was actually sent out as a single issue. If it was a double-sized issue, and if you read it like from the front back, you would get Green Lantern 28. But then if you flipped it over and read it back to front, you would get Red Lanterns 28. So I guess I'm doing them together, or I don't know. It's a lot. I have no idea how that's supposed to be handled. But there's actually one more title that I even forgot to put on screen here. Batman, Joker's Daughter. It's a one-shot dealing with Joker's daughter. I've tried to wipe this from my memory, but it has caught up to me. So we've got a Joker's Daughter one-shot as well. So just whatever, DC, whatever you want to do, whatever weird stuff you want to throw at the wall. How about the week after this? You know, we're coming up on Valentine's Day week. Why don't we do a comic entirely made out of chocolate, you know? Just go nuts with it. Just do whatever you... Who cares about the basic formatting of a week anymore? Screw it, right? Ugh. Sorry. I'm a little bit testy after such a long episode. But anyway, if you have any comments on any of the books that I read this week, last week, any week at all, go ahead and hit me up on, I don't know where. There's no good social media sites anymore. They're all crap. But we have a Discord, we do have a subreddit, and we have a Patreon. All of those are available in the links down below. Go ahead and check us out there if you got something you want to share. Anyway, that's going to do it for me. Thank you very much for tuning in, watching, listening, however it is you consume this podcast. Be sure to tune in next week. Give it all the 5-star, thumbs up, whatever you got to do. And always try to remember that if it ain't broke, don't fix it.